Right now, in this exact moment, thousands of events are unfolding around you. Light is bouncing off every surface in the room, hitting your retina at millions of points per second. Sound waves from distant traffic, humming electronics, the settling of the building, all of it is vibrating your eardrums. Your clothing is touching your skin in dozens of places. The air has a temperature, a smell, a texture. But you are not experiencing any of it. Not really. Your brain is receiving all of that information, processing it at a level so deep you will never touch it. And then, before it reaches your consciousness, it deletes 99% of it. Gone, erased, as if it never existed. You think you are awake, aware, perceiving the world. But you are not. You are living inside a tiny, curated selection of reality that your brain decided was worth showing you. The rest has been thrown away, and you never even noticed the loss. In 1999, two psychologists named Christopher Chabris and Daniel Simons conducted an experiment that would permanently change how scientists understand human attention. They filmed a short video. In it, two teams of people, one wearing white shirts, the other wearing black, passed basketballs back and forth. The task given to participants was simple: watch the video and count how many times the players in white passed the ball. That was it. Count the passes. Do not lose track. Focus. Participants sat down, watched the video, concentrated hard, and when it ended, most of them gave an accurate count. 15 passes, 16, 17. They were confident. They had done the task correctly. They had paid attention. Then the researchers asked a different question. Did you notice anything unusual in the video? Most people said no. Did you see anything unexpected? Again, no. And then the final question. Did you see the gorilla? 50% of participants had no idea what the researchers were talking about. They insisted there was no gorilla. The researchers replayed the video, and there it was. Halfway through, a person in a full gorilla costume walked directly into the center of the frame, stopped, faced the camera, beat their chest, and walked off. The gorilla was on screen for 9 full seconds. It was not hiding in the background. It was not blurred or small. It walked through the middle of the players, right where the participants had been looking, right where the ball was being passed, and half of them never saw it. Not forgot about it, not noticed but dismissed it. They did not see it. Their eyes received the light. The photons hit their retinas. The signal traveled up the optic nerve into the visual cortex, but somewhere between the eye and conscious awareness, their brain made a decision. This is not relevant to the task. Delete it. And it was gone. For those people, the gorilla did not exist. It never entered their reality. The experiment was repeated in dozens of variations, different objects, different tasks, different populations. The results stayed consistent. When attention is focused on one thing, the brain suppresses everything else, even if everything else includes a person in a gorilla suit walking through the center of your vision. Chabris and Simons called this inattentional blindness, and it revealed something deeply uncomfortable. Your conscious experience is not a recording of the world. It is a curated selection. Your brain is not showing you everything. It is showing you what it thinks matters. And if it decides something does not matter, it will delete that information before you even know it was there. Years later, researchers wanted to test whether this effect applied to experts, people whose job is literally to notice details. They recruited radiologists, doctors trained to scan medical images for tumors, fractures, abnormalities. These are people who spend years learning to see what others miss. The researchers gave them a stack of CT scans and asked them to look for lung nodules, small, round masses that could indicate cancer. The task was difficult. The radiologists scrolled carefully through each scan, examining every layer, marking anything suspicious. On the final scan, the researchers inserted something that did not belong. In the upper right corner of one slice, clearly visible, unmistakable, they placed an image of a gorilla. Not a tumor, not a medical artifact, a gorilla, 48 times larger than the average nodule the doctors were searching for, waving. 83% of the radiologists did not see it. Eye tracking software confirmed that most of them looked directly at the spot where the gorilla was placed, their eyes fixated on it. The visual information entered their brain, but they did not consciously perceive it. Why? Because they were looking for nodules. Their attention was tuned to a specific pattern: small, round, slightly irregular masses. A gorilla does not fit that pattern, so the brain, operating exactly as designed, filtered it out. 83% of highly trained professionals, people whose expertise is visual detection, missed a gorilla waving at them from inside a lung scan because their brain decided it was irrelevant noise. The information was deleted before it reached awareness. And if that can happen to an expert looking at a controlled image, what is your brain deleting from the uncontrolled chaos of everyday life?
The second pattern is even stranger. It is called change blindness, and it happens when something in your environment changes, sometimes dramatically, and your brain simply does not register the change. In one of the most famous demonstrations, a researcher approached strangers on a college campus, pretending to be lost, and asked for directions. The stranger would stop, look at a map, start explaining the route. Then, in the middle of the conversation, two people carrying a large door walked between the researcher and the stranger, blocking the view for about 2 seconds. During those 2 seconds, behind the door, the original researcher swapped places with a completely different person. Different face, different voice, different clothing, different height. The door passed, the new person continued the conversation as if nothing had happened, still holding the same map, still asking for directions. Most people did not notice. They kept talking, kept pointing at the map, kept giving directions to a person who was not the same person they had started talking to. When asked afterward, many insisted the swap never happened. They were certain they had been speaking to the same individual the entire time. Their eyes had seen both people. The visual data had been processed. But because the context stayed consistent, same conversation, same map, same location, the brain treated the two people as close enough and smoothed over the difference. It prioritized continuity over accuracy, and in doing so, it erased the change from conscious experience. The person you were talking to was replaced. Your brain saw it happen, and then it decided you did not need to know. This is not a failure of memory. It is a failure of perception. You did not forget the first person. You never fully encoded them in the first place. Your brain does not record reality like a video camera. It samples. It takes snapshots. It builds a model. And between those snapshots, there are gaps. When something changes during a gap, your brain has a choice: flag the change as important, or smooth it over to maintain the illusion of continuity. Most of the time, it chooses continuity, because continuity is cheaper. Continuity requires less processing. Continuity lets you keep moving forward without constantly stopping to reevaluate every detail of the scene. But the cost of that efficiency is that your world can change, radically, and you will not notice. Not because you are not paying attention, but because your brain chose not to show you. Now let's talk numbers. Every second, your sensory systems collect an enormous amount of raw data. Your eyes alone send roughly 10 million bits of information per second to your brain. Light intensity, color, motion, edges, textures, depth. Your ears send another million bits. Your skin, detecting pressure, temperature, pain, sends hundreds of thousands more. Add your sense of balance, your internal sense of your body's position in space, the chemical signals from your tongue and nose, and the total sensory input flooding into your nervous system every second is somewhere around 11 million bits of information. That is the raw material your brain has to work with. 11 million bits per second, a fire hose of data about the world. How much of that reaches your conscious awareness? Estimates vary, but the most widely cited research suggests the upper limit is around 10 to 50 bits per second. Not 10 million, not even 10,000, 10 bits per second. If you imagine your sensory input as a massive library containing 11 million books, your conscious mind gets to read one page from one book every second. Your brain opens one page, shows it to you, and says, "This is reality." The other 10,999,999 books are burned, deleted, erased, before you even knew they were there. You are not experiencing the world. You are experiencing a sample, a tiny, filtered, pre-selected fraction of the world that your brain has decided is relevant enough to deserve your attention. And here's the part that should terrify you. You have no idea what was deleted. You cannot. By definition, if information is filtered out before it reaches consciousness, you have no way to know it existed. Right now, as you sit here, the room around you is full of details your brain is ignoring. The texture of the wall, the hum of electronics, the pressure of your feet on the floor, the faint smell of whatever is in the air. All of that information is hitting your sensory receptors. All of it is being processed somewhere deep in your brain, but almost none of it is reaching you. Your brain has decided that for this moment, those details do not matter, and so they have been deleted from your version of reality. They exist in the world, but they do not exist in your experience. And the gap between those two things, the world as it is and the world as you perceive it, is so vast that calling it a gap feels insufficient. It is an abyss.
You walk through life believing you see what is in front of you. You believe you hear what is being said. You believe you feel the space you occupy. But you do not. You see a guess. You hear an approximation. You feel a summary. Your brain is not giving you reality. It is giving you the minimum amount of information necessary to keep you functional. It is giving you a highlight reel, edited in real time, with 99% of the footage left on the cutting room floor. And because you have never experienced anything else, because you have been living inside this edited version your entire life, you assume it is complete. You assume this is what perception is. But it is not perception. It is deletion. It is filtering. It is your brain choosing every single second what tiny sliver of the world you are allowed to see. The gorilla was there. The person you were talking to changed. The world around you right now is vastly more detailed and complex than the version you are experiencing. But your brain has looked at that world, taken in the full sensory stream, and then quietly, invisibly, effortlessly thrown most of it away. You are not living in reality. You are living in what is left after your brain finishes deleting everything it thinks you do not need. And the most disturbing part is that you will never know what you missed. Because to miss something, you have to know it was there, and your brain makes sure you never do. The question is not whether your brain deletes reality. The question is where, how, and why. And the answer to that question is more systematic, more brutal, and more inescapable than most people want to believe. This is not a bug. This is not your brain making mistakes under pressure. This is the design. This is how perception works in every human being who has ever lived. The deletion happens in stages, at multiple points in the processing chain. And by the time information reaches your conscious mind, it has already been filtered, compressed, and stripped down so many times that calling it reality is almost dishonest. What you experience is not the world. It is the world after your brain has decided what you are allowed to see. The first filter sits deep in the center of your brain, in a structure called the thalamus. Almost every sensory signal from your body passes through the thalamus before reaching the cortex, the outer layer of the brain where conscious experience is generated. The thalamus is often described as a relay station, but that metaphor makes it sound passive, like it is just passing information along. It is not. The thalamus is a gatekeeper. It is a bouncer at the entrance to a nightclub, deciding who gets in and who gets turned away. Every second, millions of sensory signals arrive at the thalamus, and the thalamus evaluates each one using a simple set of rules. Is this new? Is this a potential threat? Is this relevant to the task the organism is currently performing? If the answer to all three questions is no, the signal does not go any further. It is blocked, deleted. The information dies in the thalamus, and the cortex, where you live, never knows it existed. This is why you stop noticing the feeling of your clothes after a few minutes. The pressure is still there. The sensory receptors in your skin are still firing. The signals are still traveling up your spinal cord into your brain. But when they reach the thalamus looks at them and says, this is not new, this is not a threat, this is not relevant, and it shuts them down. The signals are suppressed before they ever reach the cortex. From the perspective of your conscious mind, the feeling simply disappears, not because the sensation stopped, but because your brain stopped letting you feel it. The thalamus made the decision that the pressure of fabric on your shoulders is not worth the processing resources it would take to keep you aware of it, so it delivered that information, and you never had a say in the matter. Sitting just above the thalamus, woven through the brainstem, is another filtering system called the reticular activating system, or RAS. If the thalamus is a gatekeeper, the RAS is the one writing the guest list. It is a network of neurons that sets the criteria for what counts as important in the first place. The RAS is not passive. It is constantly being shaped by your goals, your fears, your expectations, and your recent experiences. When you decide to focus on something, when you tell yourself, I need to count the passes, your RAS adjusts. It tunes the entire sensory system to prioritize anything that matches the task. Basketballs, movement, players in white. Everything else, the gorilla, the background, the people in black, gets deprioritized. The signals are still coming in, but the RAS has marked them as low priority, and low priority signals are far more likely to be deleted before they reach consciousness. This is why you suddenly notice a type of car everywhere after you buy one. The cars were always there. They were always on the road, always in your visual field. But before you owned one, your RAS had no reason to flag them as important. They were noise, background, irrelevant. After you buy the car, your RAS updates. It adds that make and model to the list of things worth noticing. And now suddenly, every time one passes, the signal gets through. It reaches your awareness. You think the world has changed. You think there are more of those cars on the road now. But the world did not change. Your filter changed. Your RAS decided that this specific pattern of metal and paint now matters, and it started letting those signals through. Everything else, the thousands of other cars, the pedestrians, the buildings, the sky, is still being deleted. You just do not notice the deletion because you never saw those things in the first place.
Even after a signal makes it past the thalamus and the RAS, even after it reaches the cortex, it is still not guaranteed to enter conscious awareness. The cortex is vast. It contains billions of neurons processing information in parallel. Visual cortex analyzing light, auditory cortex analyzing sound, somatosensory cortex analyzing touch. All of these regions are active all the time, processing the sensory data that survived the earlier filters. But you are not aware of most of that processing. You are only aware of the single stream of information that your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for attention and decision-making, has chosen to spotlight. Attention is often described as a spotlight for a reason. It can only illuminate one small area at a time. Everything outside the beam is still being processed, still being analyzed by your cortex, but it is being processed unconsciously. You are not experiencing it. And if you are not experiencing it, it might as well not exist. This is the architecture of deletion. 3 layers. First, the thalamus blocks anything that is not new, threatening, or task relevant. Second, the RAS tunes the entire system based on your goals and expectations, deciding in advance what categories of information are worth flagging. Third, your prefrontal cortex selects one narrow stream of information to spotlight with attention, and everything else fades into unconscious background processing. By the time you experience something, by the time you can say, "I saw that," or "I heard that," the original sensory input has been filtered 3 times, each filter discarding the vast majority of the data. What you experience is not the world. It is what is left after 3 aggressive deletion passes. And because this happens automatically, invisibly, faster than thought, you never realize how much was thrown away. Why does the brain do this? Why filter so aggressively? Why not just let everything through and let you decide what matters? The answer is simple, and it is the same answer that explains almost every strange feature of human cognition: bandwidth and energy. Your sensory systems can gather 11 million bits of information per second, but your conscious mind, the part of you that makes decisions, that thinks in words, that experiences the flow of time, can only process around 10 to 50 bits per second. That is not a software limitation. That is not something you can train yourself out of. That is a hard limit, built into the structure of neurons and synapses, into the speed at which information can travel and be integrated across distant parts of the brain. Consciousness is a bottleneck. It is the narrowest point in the entire system. And if your brain tried to push 11 million bits per second through a 10-bit per second bottleneck, the system would collapse. You would not be able to make decisions. You would not be able to act. You would be paralyzed by information overload. So evolution made a choice. It built a system that deletes most of the world before it ever reaches you. It built filters that operate below the level of awareness, stripping out anything that does not seem immediately necessary. The result is a version of reality that is tiny, incomplete, and heavily edited. But it is functional. It is fast. You can act on 10 bits per second. You can make decisions, move through space, avoid danger, pursue goals. You cannot do any of that with 11 million bits. So the brain chooses speed over completeness. It chooses action over awareness. And you, the conscious mind sitting at the end of the processing chain, never see what was sacrificed to give you that speed. Energy is the other constraint. Your brain is 2% of your body weight, but consumes 20% of your energy. Running a brain is expensive, and most of that energy is spent on processing information. If your brain tried to process all 11 million bits of sensory input at the conscious level, the energy cost would be unsustainable. You would need to eat constantly. Your body would divert resources away from every other system just to keep the brain running. Evolution does not tolerate waste like that, so the brain cuts costs. It processes most information at a low level, using simple, fast, cheap circuits. It only bumps a signal up to the expensive, slow, energy-intensive circuits of conscious awareness if that signal seems worth the cost. Everything else is handled unconsciously or deleted entirely. The deletion is not a flaw. It is an optimization. It is your brain choosing to stay within its energy budget. And the price of that optimization is that you never get to see the full world.
Now the existential weight starts to settle in. If your brain is deleting 99% of reality every second, then you are not living in the same world as the person sitting next to you. You are both in the same room, yes. The same photons are bouncing off the same surfaces. The same sound waves are vibrating the same air. But your brain has deleted a different 99% than their brain has. You noticed the hum of the lights. They did not. They noticed the flicker of shadow in the corner. You did not. You are both convinced you are experiencing the room, but you are actually experiencing 2 different, non-overlapping samples of the room. Your realities are not identical. They are parallel, separate, built from the same raw materials, but carved into completely different shapes by completely different filters. And there is no way to compare notes.
You cannot ask them, "What did you experience that I missed?" because they do not know what they missed either. Their brain deleted it before they could notice. You are both walking around in tiny private simulations of the world, each one convinced that their simulation is complete, neither one able to see the gaps. You think you are sharing an experience. You are not. You are both experiencing different thin slices of the same event, and the slices do not overlap as much as you think they do. This is why eyewitness testimony is so unreliable. This is why two people can watch the same event and give completely contradictory accounts. They are not lying. They are not confused. They saw different things, literally. Their brains selected different details to let through, deleted different parts of the scene, and built two different versions of what happened. Both versions feel complete, both feel true, but they are not complete. They are samples. And when you base your sense of reality on a sample, you are always, inevitably, missing most of the picture. The change blindness experiments make this even worse. Your brain does not just delete information in real time, it also smooths over gaps and inconsistencies to maintain the illusion of continuity. When the person you were talking to was replaced, your brain had two options. Option 1, flag the change, interrupt the flow of the conversation, force you to stop and reevaluate. Option 2, treat the new person as close enough, ignore the mismatch, and let the conversation continue without disruption. Your brain chose option 2, not because it is lazy, not because it made a mistake, but because continuity is more useful than accuracy in most situations. If you stopped every time the world changed in some minor way, you would never get anything done. So your brain errs on the side of continuity. It fills in gaps, it ignores mismatches, it builds a smooth, coherent experience out of fragmented, inconsistent data. And the cost of that smoothness is that your sense of reality can be wrong, deeply, fundamentally wrong, and you will never know. You cannot fix this. You cannot train yourself to notice more. You cannot meditate your way into seeing the full 11 million bits. The filters exist below the level of conscious control. You do not have access to the thalamus. You cannot reprogram your RAS. You cannot widen the bottleneck of consciousness. The 10 bit per second limit is hardwired into the structure of your brain. This is not something you can overcome with effort or discipline. This is the ceiling. This is as much of reality as a human being can ever experience, and it is less than 1%. So what does that mean? It means that right now, as you sit here, the world around you is vastly richer, vastly more complex, vastly more detailed than the thin slice you are experiencing. There are patterns in the light you are not seeing. There are sounds in the air you are not hearing. There are textures, temperatures, movements, all unfolding in real time, all being deleted by your brain before they reach you. You are not living in the world. You are living in a guess about the world, a model, a simulation built from fragments. And the only reason that simulation feels complete, feels solid, feels real, is that your brain has spent your entire life hiding the gaps from you. Every second, 11 million bits of reality are reduced to 10. Every second, your brain makes a billion tiny decisions about what to keep and what to discard. Every second, 99% of the world is erased before you ever knew it was there. You are not perceiving reality. You are perceiving the leftovers, the scraps, the 1% that your brain could not afford to delete. And that 1% has to be enough, because it is all you are ever going to get.